Before sunrise, in the mountains of Japan's Kii Peninsula, an old road waits under cedar trees. The stones are damp. Ferns lean over the path. Mist hangs between trunks so tall that the first light does not reach the ground all at once. Somewhere below the ridge, a river moves through the valley. Somewhere above it, a bell will soon sound from a shrine or a temple hidden by trees. A walker steps onto the road slowly, not because the distance is impossible, but because the road asks for a different kind of attention. The path is narrow in places. It climbs through roots and stones. It crosses small bridges, passes abandoned terraces, and enters villages where wooden houses face the mountains as if listening to them. This road is part of the Kumano Kodo, a network of pilgrimage routes across Japan's Kii Peninsula. For more than 1,000 years, people have walked these mountains toward places known collectively as Kumano Sanzan, the three great shrines of Kumano: Kumano Hongu Taisha, Kumano Hayatama Taisha, and Kumano Nachi Taisha. The destination was sacred, but so was the walking. From the direction of the old capitals, emperors and retired emperors heard about Kumano as a remote land of gods, forests, waterfalls, and rebirth. Aristocrats traveled there in elaborate processions. Monks walked there with prayers. Later, common people came in such numbers that one phrase compared the pilgrims to ants moving toward Kumano. The road was never only a road. It was a way of leaving the ordinary world without leaving Japan. It connected Shinto shrines, Buddhist temples, and the mountain practices of Shugendo, where ascetics trained in difficult landscapes. It passed by small subsidiary shrines called oji, where pilgrims rested, prayed, and marked the stages of the journey. In 2004, UNESCO inscribed the sacred sites and pilgrimage routes in the Kii Mountain Range as a World Heritage Site. The listing recognized not only buildings and shrines, but a cultural landscape: mountains, forests, rivers, paths, and the traditions that gave them meaning. But the road does not feel like an inscription when you walk it. It feels like wet stone under your feet. It feels like the smell of cedar after rain. It feels like a clearing where someone left a small offering centuries ago, and someone else has kept the place swept. It feels like the body learning that distance can become prayer. Kumano is often described as a place of rebirth. That does not have to mean something dramatic. Sometimes rebirth is only this: you enter the forest carrying the noise of one life, and after many hours of walking, the noise has become quieter. The mountains have not explained themselves. The road has not solved anything, but it has remembered every footstep placed upon it, and for a little while, it has allowed yours to join them. The Kii Peninsula reaches into the Pacific Ocean like a green shoulder of Japan. Its mountains are steep, wet, and deeply forested. Rivers cut through valleys. Clouds gather quickly. Rain falls often. The sea is never entirely absent, even when the path is climbed far inland. Long before the name Kumano Kodo became familiar to modern travelers, the region was known as a difficult and sacred place. In Japanese religious imagination, mountains were not empty scenery. They were thresholds. They were places where human settlements thinned and other presences began. Kumano lay far from the old capitals of Nara and Kyoto. That distance mattered. A sacred place close at hand can become familiar. A sacred place beyond mountains keeps something of its danger. To reach Kumano, pilgrims had to leave court, home, market, and field. They had to submit to weather, steep paths, river crossings, and fatigue. The three great shrines of Kumano are not identical, and they are not arranged like a single temple complex. Kumano Hongu Taisha stands in the inland mountains, long associated with the heart of the pilgrimage. Kumano Hayatama Taisha stands near the mouth of the Kumano River, where river and sea meet. Kumano Nachi Taisha rises near Nachi Falls, one of Japan's tallest waterfalls, where water drops from a cliff through a wall of forest. Together, they form Kumano Sanzan. The old belief was not simply that gods lived in buildings. The waterfall itself mattered. The river mattered. The forest mattered. The path mattered. Sacredness was distributed through the landscape. This is one reason Kumano became a place where different traditions met. Shinto reverence for kami, Buddhist ideas of salvation and rebirth, and the mountain discipline of Shugendo did not remain neatly separated in the mountains. Over centuries, they overlapped. A pilgrim might bow before a shrine, hear Buddhist chanting, pass an ascetic training ground, and understand all of it as part of one journey toward transformation. Modern categories can make this sound confusing. On the road, it may have felt more natural. A mountain can hold more than one meaning. A waterfall can be water, a kami, a Buddhist symbol, and a physical test of the body, all at once. The pilgrimage routes reflected this layered world. The Nakahechi route became one of the main paths from the direction of Kyoto toward Kumano. The Kohechi route crossed the mountains between Koyasan and Kumano. The Iseji route connected Ise Grand Shrine with Kumano along the eastern side of the peninsula. Other routes linked the sacred places through coast, ridge, and valley. No single line contains Kumano. It is a network of approaches, each shaped by geography and memory. For a bedtime documentary, it is tempting to imagine the ancient road as empty and timeless. But old pilgrimages were full of practical matters. People needed food, guides, lodging, sandals, boats, and safe crossings. Local communities supported the road. Tea houses and inns appeared. Shrines received offerings. Stories moved with travelers. A sacred landscape was also an economy of care, labor, and risk. The mountain path survived because many kinds of people kept using it. Rulers seeking religious merit, monks carrying teachings, villagers maintaining stations, and ordinary pilgrims hoping that the journey might change the weight of their lives. When you stand on the old stones now, the visible scene is quiet. Trees, moss, a bend in the path. But beneath that quiet is a long human arrangement. A road is never only where people walk. It is also where they agree, generation after generation, that walking still matters. In the Heian period, Kumano became deeply important to the imperial court. Retired emperors and aristocrats made repeated journeys from the capital toward the shrines. These were not casual walks. They were organized processions with attendants, ritual observances, and days of travel through difficult terrain. The journey allowed members of the court to move away from the formal world of rank and ceremony into another kind of order. In Kumano, the mountains offered purification and the hope of spiritual renewal. The road was not outside power, but it placed power under different conditions. Even a retired emperor had to cross rivers and climb hills. Over time, the pilgrimage widened beyond the court. Warriors, monks, merchants, farmers, and people from many walks of life made their way toward Kumano. The phrase Ari no Kumano Mode, often translated as the ants' pilgrimage to Kumano, suggests the sight of so many pilgrims moving along the routes that they seemed like lines of ants. The image is beautiful because it changes the scale. A single pilgrim can feel small in the mountains. 1,000 pilgrims become a living current. The road carried private hopes, but it also became collective movement. People walked for many reasons. Some sought purification from illness, grief, or misfortune. Some hoped for rebirth in a Buddhist sense. Some fulfilled vows. Some traveled because others in their community traveled. Some may have wanted, as people still do, to step away from ordinary obligations long enough to hear themselves think. Pilgrimage is often described as a journey to a destination. Kumano complicates that. The destination was crucial, but the path itself shaped the pilgrim. Each day stripped away comfort. Feet grew sore, clothes dampened. The body learned the rhythm of ascent and descent. Meals became simple. Sleep came heavily. The world narrowed to the next bend, the next ridge, the next shrine. Along the Nakahechi route, small OG shrines marked the way. These were subsidiary shrines connected to the Kumano deities, places where pilgrims could pray and rest. Some were modest, some became significant ritual stations. Together they turned the road into a chain of pauses. A pause matters on a pilgrimage. Without pauses, a road is only distance. With pauses, it becomes a sequence of attention. At an oji, a traveler might bow, offer a prayer, adjust a sandal, drink water, or wait for others. The shrine did not need to be large to change the journey. Its presence reminded the walker that the path was not random ground. It had been named, cared for, and entered by countless people before. The old pilgrimage could also be dangerous. Weather changed quickly, rivers flooded, mountain paths were hard. A modern walker with good shoes and signs may still feel the strain of the route. An older pilgrim had fewer protections. That difficulty was part of the meaning. Kumano was not reached by desire alone. It required endurance. Yet the road was not a battlefield. Its drama was slow. A person did not conquer the mountain. A person continued. Step after step, the path converted intention into movement. That may be why the idea of Kumano still speaks to people who do not share the old religious world exactly. Modern walkers may come for history, nature, photography, silence, or personal reflection. They may not know every deity or doctrinal layer, but they understand the old grammar of the body. If you walk long enough through rain and cedar shadow, you begin to understand why a road could become sacred. The ants' pilgrimage was not about one heroic figure. It was about multitudes. It was about small bodies moving through large mountains, trusting that the journey itself was doing something invisible. At Kumano Hongu Taisha, the mountain air feels inland and enclosed. The shrine stands among trees, its architecture restrained and dignified. Nearby is Oyunohara, the former shrine site on a sandbank where the Kumano River and Otonashi River meet. In 1889, a severe flood damaged the old site, and the main shrine buildings were moved to their present location. The empty ground of Oyunohara still carries weight. It reminds the visitor that sacred places also belong to rivers, weather, and time. At Kumano Hayatama Taisha, the atmosphere changes. The shrine is near the river mouth at Shingu, closer to sea routes and the movement of water toward the Pacific. The journey to Kumano was never only over mountains. Rivers and boats mattered too. The Kumano River could be a route, a boundary, and a sacred presence. Then there is Nachi. Kumano Nachi Taisha is associated with Nachi Falls, where water drops more than 100 meters through the forest. The waterfall is not a decoration behind the shrine. It is one of the reasons the place is sacred. Long before formal buildings shaped the site, the falling water itself drew reverence. To stand near a great waterfall is to understand why people made religions out of water and stone. The sound fills the body. Mist touches the face. The eye follows the white column downward again and again, and still the fall is not exhausted. It is movement that appears permanent. Beside the shrine stands Seigan Toji, a Buddhist temple long connected to the sacred complex at Nachi. The famous view of a pagoda with the waterfall rising behind it is more than picturesque. It shows, in one frame, the layered religious history of Kumano: shrine, temple, forest, water, mountain. For centuries, such places did not ask pilgrims to choose only one meaning. The world was large enough for overlapping truth. A pilgrim arriving at the three shrines would not have experienced them as museum stops. The journey had prepared the body. After days of walking, a gait looks different. Water sounds different. A prayer made with tired legs may not be the same prayer made at home. There were rituals, offerings, and formal devotions. But there were also ordinary human moments: removing wet sandals, warming hands, eating a simple meal, watching clouds pass through cedar branches. Sacred travel is made of both ceremony and discomfort. Kumano's power lies partly in this mixture. It is grand, but not distant. The shrines are connected to imperial history and religious tradition, but they are also reached by paths of mud, stone, and sweat. The waterfall may symbolize purification, but it is also cold water falling because the mountain holds rain. The landscape keeps theology from becoming abstract. A person can speak of rebirth as an idea. In Kumano, the idea is tied to descent and ascent, river and forest, loss and arrival. You leave one valley, you climb, you descend into another. You cross water, you pass a shrine, you sleep, you wake, and continue. The body rehearses transformation before the mind names it. This may be why so many sacred landscapes around the world are walked rather than merely seen. Walking gives time for meaning to settle. The path is slow enough for memory to attach itself to place. At Nachi, the waterfall continues whether pilgrims arrive or not. At Hongu, the river still remembers flood. At Hayatama, the river approaches the sea. The shrines remain, but they do not stand apart from change. They are sacred partly because they have endured change without pretending to be outside it. The road brings people to them quietly, one breath and one footstep at a time. Much of Kumano's emotional force comes from the forest. The path enters cedar, cypress, bamboo, fern, and moss. Light breaks into pieces. The air smells of rain, even when rain is not falling. Small streams cross the trail. Stone steps appear, disappear, and return. In places, the road feels less built than revealed, as if the mountain allowed a narrow human line to pass through it. This is a good illusion, but it is still an illusion. The route exists because people made and maintained it. Stones were placed, slopes were cut, bridges were built, shrines were tended, villages hosted travelers. A pilgrimage landscape is natural and human at the same time. That mixture is important. Kumano is not wilderness in the sense of a world untouched by people. It is a cultural landscape, shaped by centuries of devotion, travel, forestry, settlement, and memory. The forest is real, and so is the labor that kept a road open inside it. For old pilgrims, the forest could be beautiful, frightening, exhausting, and protective. Trees closed around the path, sounds changed. The ordinary signs of social life grew faint. In such a place, the boundary between worlds becomes easier to imagine. Japanese mountain religion often treated difficult landscapes as places of training. Shugendo practitioners, sometimes called Yamabushi, entered mountains to cultivate spiritual power through austerity. The Omine Mountains, also part of the broader sacred landscape recognized by UNESCO, became especially associated with such practices. The ordinary pilgrim to Kumano was not necessarily a mountain ascetic, but the road shared something with ascetic practice. It asked the body to work. It made comfort uncertain. It placed the traveler under rain, darkness, fatigue, and silence. There is a quiet honesty in that. The mountains do not flatter the pilgrim. They do not say that intention is enough. They answer intention with gradient, weather, and distance. In the forest, time also behaves differently. A modern road tells you how quickly you can arrive. An old path tells you how long attention can last. The difference matters. On a pilgrimage, efficiency is not always a virtue. Too much speed can defeat the point of the journey. A walker notices small things because there is no other way to continue well. A root crossing the path, a wet stone, a bird call, the color change in moss, the place where the air cools before a stream, the sound of one's own breathing. The bedtime quality of Kumano comes from this slowing. Nothing needs to explode into significance. A path through trees can hold the viewer for minutes if the story knows how to listen. But the forest should not be romanticized as empty peace. People lived and worked here. Wood was cut, villages struggled, storms damaged trails. Modern depopulation affects mountain communities. tourism can bring income and pressure at the same time. Preserving Kumano means preserving not just scenery, but the relationship between path, village, shrine, and forest. The old road is therefore fragile in a way stone does not immediately reveal. Moss can make a step look eternal. In reality, a road survives only if people keep choosing to care for it. That care may be the most important continuity between past and present. The ancient pilgrim prayed at an oji. A modern local repairs a trail sign. A visitor closes a gate, steps carefully, and carries away nothing but memory. These acts are not equal, but they belong to the same larger truth. Sacred places are kept by attention. In Kumano, attention is not loud. It sounds like water moving under leaves. It looks like a swept shrine yard in a mountain village. It feels like a hand resting briefly on a walking staff before the next ascent. A pilgrimage route is not made only of sacred sites. It is also made of places to sleep. Along the Kumano Kodo, villages appear after long stretches of forest. A few roofs, a garden wall, terraced fields. Smoke or steam rising in cold air. A vending machine in a place where an exhausted modern walker may feel unexpected gratitude. The old and new sit together without much ceremony. In earlier centuries, pilgrims depended on local communities. They needed lodging, food, information, and sometimes rescue from weather or injury. The road created relationships between travelers and residents. A sacred journey still required cooked rice, dry bedding, and someone who knew the next stretch of path. This practical side can be easy to miss because pilgrimage is often described in elevated language. But the body does not travel through symbols alone. It gets hungry, it blisters, it sweats, it becomes cold. In the old days, inns and rest stations helped shape the rhythm of the journey. Today, places such as Chikatsuyu, Sugizakura, Yunomine Onsen, and Kahwayu Onsen remain part of the modern walking experience along popular sections of the route. Some are small, some are known for hot springs, some feel like pauses where the road becomes domestic again. Yunomine Onsen is often described as one of Japan's old hot spring settlements, long associated with Kumano pilgrimage. For a tired walker, hot water is not a luxury separate from the journey. It is part of returning the body to itself. Kahwayu Onsen offers another kind of memory, where hot spring water rises near the river. The image of soaking beside flowing water may sound like tourism, and today it often is, but it also points to something older, the way mountains give both hardship and relief. The road was never only denial, it contained comfort too. A pilgrim might walk through rain all morning and then sit near a hearth in the evening. A modern walker may spend hours under cedar trees and then eat dinner in a family-run inn. The contrast is not a betrayal of pilgrimage. It is part of the rhythm that makes pilgrimage human. Hospitality matters because it prevents the road from becoming a private fantasy. Every pilgrim depends on others. Someone grew the food. Someone maintained the bridge. Someone preserved the shrine. Someone kept the inn open even when the village grew older and fewer young people stayed. This is one of the quiet contemporary stories of Kumano. Many rural areas in Japan face aging populations and declining numbers. A pilgrimage route can bring visitors, but visitors do not automatically solve local problems. They can help sustain inns, guides, buses, and small businesses, but they can also change the atmosphere of a place if numbers grow faster than care. Kumano is valuable because it is not a theme park. Its power depends on slowness, respect, and the sense that the road belongs first to the landscape and the communities that keep it. For the storyteller, this human road is essential. Without villages and inns, Kumano becomes only forest and shrine, beautiful but incomplete. The pilgrim road is a chain of dependency. Sacred mountains, yes, but also rice bowls, slippers at an inn entrance, a towel drying by a heater, an old woman tending a garden beside a path that strangers from across the world now walk. The grand history of retired emperors and World Heritage recognition is real. So is the small kindness of a place to sit. At night, after the walking is done, the mountains become dark around the village. The road that felt endless in the afternoon becomes invisible. The body aches, the mind quiets. Somewhere nearby, water moves through a channel or riverbed. Tomorrow, the pilgrim will continue. For now, the road has become a room, a meal, and sleep. The Kumano Kodo did not survive unchanged. No old road does. Roots fall out of use. Forest grows over stones. New roads and railways alter movement. Villages shrink. Religious practice changes. What looks ancient to a visitor may have passed through neglect, rediscovery, restoration, and careful management before becoming visible again. UNESCO recognition in 2004 brought international attention to the sacred sites and pilgrimage routes of the Kii Mountain Range. It helped frame Kumano as a cultural landscape of global value. For many modern travelers, the World Heritage listing is how they first encounter the name. This attention has benefits. It supports preservation. It brings walkers to rural communities. It encourages people outside Japan to understand that Japanese culture is not only cities, castles, anime, food, or temples seen from buses. It is also rain on stone steps and the slow work of maintaining a mountain path. But recognition also changes a place. A road once walked for devotion may now be walked for personal reflection, exercise, photography, heritage tourism, or a mixture of motives. That is not necessarily wrong. Pilgrimage has always contained mixed motives. The question is whether the new forms of walking can remain respectful enough to keep the road's older meanings alive. Modern trail signs, maps, websites, guidebooks, and luggage services make parts of Kumano more accessible than they once were. A person can plan stages, book accommodation, and walk selected sections rather than the whole network. This accessibility opens the road to more people. It also risks making the path feel like a product. The best modern walking of Kumano resists that. It uses support without losing humility. It accepts that one may be a tourist and still behave like a guest. It understands that silence is part of the experience, not an empty space waiting to be filled. The road's appeal today may also come from exhaustion. Many people live in systems of speed, screens, deadlines, cities, constant messages, constant choices. Kumano offers a different order. The next step is enough. The next shrine is enough. The next village is enough. This simplicity is not the same as escape. The mountains do not erase the world. They give the walker a slower way to carry it. There is also a global reason the road matters. Across the world, old pilgrimage routes have become important again, sometimes for people who are not conventionally religious. Walking offers a form of reflection that modern life often lacks. It makes thought physical. It gives grief, uncertainty, and transition somewhere to go. Kumano belongs to Japan, and its religious history should not be flattened into a universal wellness story. But it can speak beyond its origins, because roads do something human beings understand very deeply. They connect leaving and arriving. They turn distance into sequence. They make change imaginable. For a long-form documentary, the modern Kumano should not be presented as a lost world, perfectly preserved. That would be too easy. It is better to see it as a living inheritance, partly ancient, partly restored, partly touristic, partly devotional, partly local, partly global. A living inheritance is harder to describe than a relic. It has contradictions. It needs money and quiet. It needs visitors and restraint. It needs signs for safety and enough mystery that the road does not become merely a checklist. The old pilgrims did not walk through a museum. neither do modern walkers. They walk through a landscape, still negotiating what it means to be remembered. Perhaps that is why the road remains powerful. It does not claim that the past can be entered whole. It offers something more modest and more honest, a path where the present can walk beside traces of the past. At the end of a day on the Kumano Kodo, the road does not announce that anything has changed. The trees stand as they stood in the morning. The stones hold their dampness. A stream continues down the slope. In a village, lights come on behind papered windows or modern glass. Shoes are left by a doorway. A walking staff leans against a wall. The pilgrim may have reached a shrine or only the next inn. In Kumano, both kinds of arrival matter. A great gate can mark a sacred threshold, but so can the moment when the body finally stops walking and realizes how much distance it has carried. What does the mountain keep? It keeps names: Hongu, Hayatama, Nachi, Koyasan, Yoshino, Omine. It keeps routes: Nakahechi, Kohechi, Iseji, Ohechi, and others. It keeps the memory of Oji shrines where travelers paused. It keeps the sound of Nachi Falls and the river at Oyunohara. It keeps the layered history of kami, Buddhas, ascetics, emperors, villagers, and strangers. But it also keeps things no record can fully hold. The weight of wet clothing, the silence after a difficult climb, the warmth of a bowl of food, the embarrassment of needing help, the relief of seeing a roof, the small courage required to continue when the path rises again. A sacred road is made from these things as much as from doctrine. Kumano has been called a place of rebirth, and that word should be handled gently. Not everyone who walks there is reborn. Not every journey heals. Mountains are not machines for transformation. They do not take sorrow in at one end and return wisdom at the other. But a road can rearrange attention. It can make a person smaller in a way that feels merciful. It can replace the noise of the self with rain, breath, and the sound of feet on stone. It can remind the walker that many lives have passed through difficulty before, and that continuing is sometimes its own form of prayer. This is what the Kumano Kodo offers now, long after the great court processions and long after the first shrines were raised in the forest. It offers continuity without pretending that nothing has changed. It offers beauty without removing effort. It offers sacredness not as a spectacle, but as a relationship between place and repeated human care. Somewhere on the Kii Peninsula, mist gathers again before dawn. The cedar trunks darken in the first blue light. A shrine yard is quiet. A waterfall keeps falling. A village road turns toward the mountains. A modern walker tightens a strap, steps outside, and begins. The road does not ask who they were yesterday. It does not promise who they will become tomorrow. It only receives the next footstep. And under the trees, among stones worn by centuries of weather and prayer, the old road remembers.